Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Saunders, and this is the Connecticut Sports Talent Show, where we talk all things talents in Connecticut. And this is a special Connecticut girls high school basketball preview. I've had the boys on between Norwalk and also East Lyme, but now I'm going to Middletown, and I have the head coach on the girls' side. His name is Rob Smernoff. Coach, it's great to be able to have you on, and I really appreciate you taking some time on your Friday night to be able to join me right here on the CT Sports Talent Show.
Happy to be on.
And it's, I've always believed, because I feel like when it comes to basketball and all sports, the boys seem like they get a little bit more, I think, when attention to media and people talking about it. But girls basketball, since I've been doing it, on the radio now for multiple years, it's a lot of fun. And I feel like there's more strategy because, for various reasons, but mainly the strategy when it comes to girls basketball is just very unique, and I love it.
I actually, I'm a basketball junkie, of course, but I love coaching girls basketball. In my background, I've coached both boys and girls basketball. So I was an assistant coach for the Middletown JV and freshman boys years ago. But it's so rewarding coaching the girls. They're so receptive to ideas and coaching. And I think if like people come out to see some of the top level teams play, we play at a very good pace, and the kids just do a great job playing. I know people call it old school basketball, but we're new school as well. We get up and down the court. We played a game a couple years in the CCC tournament where we beat Southington 91-82 in a regulation without any overtime. So hopefully people come out to see not just our team, but so many teams, because there's great basketball all over the state, boys and girls.
Now, Coach, I know we're going to talk about your program in a little bit, but I kind of want to ask you. I mean, how long have you been a part of the Middletown community?
I'm in my 24th year as a teacher, and my 8th year, I'm also the district department head for PE and health. So I get to see the kids from age 3 and 4 in preschool all the way through seniors in high school. And now what's even more rewarding is I have a freshman on my team, for example, who I coached her brother probably about 18 years ago. I was an assistant with the boys team, and his daughter is now playing on our freshman team. So it's really cool.
How old does that make you feel?
Well, I still tell the kids that I'm turning 30 next year, but as you could tell by my lack of hair, nobody believes that.
Hey, it's okay. I have the LeBron thing going too. It just keeps going back, back, and back,
Yeah.
But that's really like that's. I feel like it's crucial as a coach if you have the ability to be able to be in the building, in the area, because then you really are able to. And I don't want to say police, but I feel like you're able to really kind of make sure that the players are being what they're supposed to be, students first,
Mhm.
but also too, if they need to come to you for something, they don't have to go a mile and a half to get you. That you're literally down the hall.
Yes, we've been fortunate that my JV coach Kelvin Jones has also been in the building the last 15 years. So anytime a student might have an issue, if they
Mhm.
can't find me, he's always available. And now we have a volunteer coach, Zach Deshalis, who's also a teacher in the building. So the kids have 3 different resources they can go to in the middle of the day. So it is definitely helpful.
That's fantastic, and I love hearing that, Coach. I really do. I want to hit on the part of you being with the boys program for just a second, because
Mhm.
I had the opportunity when I was interning with WATR before I eventually took over as the play-by-play person, head person. We did a game of which Middletown was playing against Sacred Heart, and that was where the winner was going on to the final. That game was at Buckley High School, very nice high school. I mean, Eric Mangini's basically flag is right there. It was really cool to see that. But just seeing Middletown for the first time, and I understand it was a couple years ago, Coach, but they were big, they were physical, they were well coached. It was a hard fought game from beginning to end. The student section was crazy. Just take me into your time on the boys' side, because I'd love to hear that.
Well, that was actually now I'm going to feel old. That was about between 15 and 20 years ago, because I've been the varsity girls coach for it's my 15th year now.
Mm.
But I actually worked with the varsity coach was Avery Askew at the time, and it was just it's a different type of basketball that's played, just much quicker pace with great athleticism. But it was just a great time. I really enjoyed coaching the boys. And quite honestly, when I looked at kind of the future, I did want to run my own program, and It was clear that the girls coach at the time um, was probably only going to be there a few more years because his daughter ended up being a star player on our team. And I know he wanted to support her. So he wasn't going to be able to commit the time to coaching and also be a great dad, which he is. So that's kind of the basis of why I switched from coaching the boys to the girls.
Is there anything when you switched over from from the boys to the girls rather, that you kind of had to, I don't know, if change up your coaching style, maybe go about practices different? Is there anything that you can share?
I wouldn't say it was too much difference because when I first started, and because I started coaching 25 years ago, I know I'm only 29, but I started 25 years ago. I was the JV coach with Vinny Sanfrani at Windsor for the girls program, and then I was like the interim varsity coach at EO Smith for 1 year for the girls. So I went from the girls to the boys, and then back to the girls. And really, the way we run our practices, I had an incredible experience when I went to UConn. I went there from 93 to 97, and I was a manager for 1 year and then the head manager for 3 years with the UConn women's program. So I was at all the practices, all the individual skill sessions, all the trips, all the amazing things associated with that. So really learned from just really four amazing coaches because of course everyone knows Gino and he does a great job, but I was also there with Chris Daly and Tanya Cardoza was there and Megan Pattison at the time. Now I know it's Megan Cuomo. So just watching each one of them run skill stations and skill developments are things that we still use today in our practices.
Is there anything that you can share with the conversations at your time at UConn with as many people as you were, either with coaches, players, anything that you can share? Because I've never talked to somebody who was actually in the program.
I just think the biggest thing that I learned from being part of that for 4 years, and obviously they were the ones playing and coaching. I was just helping out in the background. I didn't score any baskets in 4 years. Was just how accountable he held his top players. Because a lot of times you'll hear like people will say, "Well, coach kind of favors kids," or when a player reaches a certain level, they don't really get coached a lot. But I can tell you, even like the month before when we won the national championship in '95, Coach Oriema had a manager videotape Rebecca Lobo for 2 hours straight in practice and showed it to her to show her what she can improve on and what she was good at. And that was a person who was National Player of the Year. So I really took a lot from you have to hold your best players accountable if you expect to hold everyone else accountable as well.
Do you think though too, coach, as well? Because different coaches find different ways to be able to get to that ability of coaching. And I
Mhm.
know now when you were a manager at UConn, did you ever think that coaching was going to be an opportunity for you at some point?
That was really the reason I did it.
Okay.
Because I played when I was younger, but my genetics are not exactly the greatest to become an NBA player. I say this to my players, and if any of them ever see this, I'm sure they'll laugh when I say it and probably roll their eyes. But I tell them all the time, like, when you're 5'7.5", white and Jewish, you're probably not making the NBA. So I knew pretty young that if I wanted to stay involved in basketball, because I've always loved basketball, it was going to be in a coaching capacity.
Okay, because again, I think that's a very funny quote. I like that. I had to think for a second. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. Um, Coach, I think looking at your time at UConn, and I've always believed that there's, like I said, coaches find different avenues to coaching, but also too certain spots that they're in could speed their development as a coach. I know when I had the East Lyme coach a couple of days ago on, he told me when he was injured and he went to Hamilton, a part of the NESCAC, he got hurt his senior year, one game in, so he became the de facto grad assistant.
Mhm.
And he said that really kind of, it's one thing to play, it's another thing to sit behind and watch. And he said he saw the game from a different angle. And the same thing for you, coaches, that you seeing how a program is run from top to bottom, from Gino himself. I mean, the one of the best women's coaches ever, legit ever. You were there firsthand. That had to speed up your development back in 93 to 97. It had to.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. Just learning, even like anytime we have an issue with maybe we're not rebounding well in a game or passing or whatever it may be, just I always reflect on that. And I have some notes that I try to remember all the different drills and skill development that they ran. And I try to implement that with our kids, obviously not at the same level. Unfortunately, I'm not coaching Paige Beck, well, not Paige Becker's right now, but Paige Becker's level players yet. Um, but it's certainly been tremendously helpful. And another thing that I really picked up from being there is that I can remember, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of this, but it was that week of the Final Four when UConn was playing Stanford, and that was the first time that was their first national championship year, '95. I remember Coach Oyama watched the Rockets play a game, and he picked up a little quick hitter from the Rockets, and he used it to help out Kara Walters, and she had her best game of the year against Stanford. I believe she scored 31, and I remember just thinking, like, if this coach at this level is still watching basketball to learn new tricks and to learn new plays, I certainly, as a 20 something year old at the time, I certainly better be doing that too.
I think really, coach, I've always believed the great coaches, Belichick, albeit his tree is not very good away from him because they want to try to beat him. I've always believed that coaches, the great ones, are also great teachers. And no matter if it's the players, managers like yourself at the time back in 93 to 97 with UConn, or just in general, if they're able to leave an imprint on anybody, 5 minutes, a half hour, however long, that just goes to show that they're not only great coaches, but they're great people. And I think Gino is really one of those great people when it comes to the game, but also outside the game too.
No, I certainly agree with that. You'll get no argument on my end. I mean, they were so respectful and nice of everybody. It wasn't just the 15 players on the roster. It was the managers, it was the security guards, anyone who helped out, the equipment manager, the people that helped them behind the scenes. Like, that was another thing I really learned, is that you need to really appreciate and value all the people that help your program succeed. And I think even for like a high school coach, we really value like what our youth coaches do, because they're all out there volunteering and they're giving our kids the fundamentals to be successful at the high school level.
And as any program can succeed, you need players that can play, but you also need a team aspect. And I think, Coach, well, you haven't had a Paige Becker by any means. You've had the opportunity to be able to coach a lot of very good players. And I've seen some of them in Middletown just throughout, looking at, because I follow the college game from Division I, Division III. A lot of them have gone off to be able to play college ball and just the high school level as well. Can you take me into like was there a story or two that maybe you had to dig into the UConn days to maybe one of those great players during your coaching career thus far?
Um, nothing's coming off the top of my head. I apologize. I'm sure that I've used it. It's not, hasn't been intentionally use it.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing we do push in our program is that we want every kid on our team to at least have an opportunity to go to college. Not necessarily play basketball in college, but go to college, because in our community, it's a huge push. And not every kid, unfortunately, in our community gets to that point where they have at least that option. So that's really something we work with all the time. And our top players, we're providing as much help as we can to at least open their eyes to the opportunities that can present themselves. And we tell the kids, especially the ones that we can see with talent, that right off the bat, there's an opportunity for you to play basketball after high school. Because a lot of kids, I think, just watch, all they see on TV, if there's a women's basketball game on, is UConn or a team like that. And they might think, well, I can't play at that level, but we remind them there's Division II and Division III as well. And that's really where we've seen a lot of our successes. Even in the past week, we had one of our former graduates, Amanda Fudge, goes to St. Joe's in West Hartford, and she had 27 points and they won by 2 points. So that's just, that makes my day. And we have Savannah Barkholm there doing great, and Kaya Mayo's at Eastern right now. And there's so many others that have played before them. And those are what we live for.
I keep mentioning what I believe, but again, it's not so much Division I, it's Division II, Division III. If you can play, people will find you. It doesn't matter where you are, how far the program is, how much winning or lack thereof. If you can play, you can play. Like, people will find you. And I think when it comes to the game of women's basketball, especially too, it's, if you're able to play the right brand of basketball, there's very smart. I've talked to some very intelligent coaches, both men and women on the women basketball side, and they know what they're looking for, and if they find it, they typically get that player.
No, I fully agree, and it's been incredibly challenging for this year's group of seniors and last year's group just because the recruiting has been so much different because of obviously the challenges that have happened in our world. Um, but but I fully agree. Like the coaches, and we tell our players that we tell our players within 2 minutes a coach can watch you and see your habits and see what you're doing on the court, and they've pretty much made a determination, good or bad.
And coach, since you mentioned last year, and I'm glad that you did because I wanted to, hit on that for a second. Um, Obviously, none of us could ever. I mean, it's very easy to predict. Okay, if we're down by 30, how am I going to react? Or if we're in a tight game, how are you going to react? It's easy to. It's somewhat. You can plan for that somewhat. Last year was unpredictable. Could never ever plan that. Never in your right mind. And if someone ever thought that was going to happen, then you can predict the future. And I would love to know what the lottery number is for
Yes,
tomorrow.
me too.
But how, and I've asked various coaches this and I've heard different things, and that's great to hear because nobody was going off the play, the same play sheet. How did you and your team manage last year with all that was going on between the virus and other situations that were happening, you know, throughout the year?
I think really initially, I will be honest with you, we were unbelievably disappointed because we had a group last year that we felt had a chance to have a special year, and we did have a special year. But obviously, you're hoping there's a final tournament to play in the state tournament. But I think really what I saw from my kids last year was probably the best attitude team I've ever had because they were just so happy after so many months of like our school last year started as remote, so we weren't even hybrid until a little bit before our seasons were getting going. And they were just happy to be around each other and they just enjoyed every day. And that's really what we focused in on because we had a lot of teams in our school in the fall that had their seasons cut short. Our boys soccer team was undefeated. They were getting ready to play undefeated Weathersfield in like their Battle of the Titans. And then they had to be shut down because of COVID. Um, so really we just focused in on like all of our focus was let's enjoy being around each other, work on our skills, and we really just made our whole season about playing Weathersfield because that happened to be our first game, knowing that there might not be a second game. And that's really how we approached each game. And I do think that seeing so many other teams have to sit out games really helped our kids make sure they make good decisions. Because so many teams, you saw it, had played 7 or 8 games and then their seasons got canceled. And we played all 12 games and we played 2 games in the CCC tournament. And I really think it was just the kids being aware if I don't do what I'm supposed to, our whole team's going to get shut down.
Do you also think, though, too, coach, that at the same time that helped for this year? Because, like you said, not, before going through everything that was with the virus and almost having to hold the team accountable amongst the team, not yourself, but the team having to hold each other accountable and themselves. That in some ways had to help going into this year because same situation. You have to wear masks at least until I think the 23rd, and then they're going to look back at it again. The virus is still here. It's not going away. You still kind of have to go about the certain protocols still. That discipline from last year carries over to this year. And I don't anticipate your players sitting in the corner pouting. I think they're going to be like, hey, we're playing, we're practicing, we're going at it. Let's just do what we did last year. And let's, like, what's the saying? Let's just keep the train going.
Yeah, that's
Run it
definitely
back.
it's definitely I would say night and day. When I try to remember what it was like pre-COVID and like what we are now, and it's definitely the kids are more respectful to each other. There's not that there was attitudes 2 or 3 years ago, but that doesn't exist at all because the kids I think are still so grateful that they're playing. And we happen to have a lot of students. Our district had a policy last year: if you were remote, you couldn't play on the team for safety purposes. Totally understand it. So I had a lot of younger players who didn't play last year as freshmen who are now playing as sophomores, and you can see that enthusiasm and excitement that they get to play basketball.
What kind of players in particular, coach? Because now I want to hit on obviously the present because
Yep.
I don't know a lot about Middletown. I know enough, but obviously you being there and being a part of the program for so long, I'd love to be able to pick your brain. Um, what kind of team do you have, without giving up too much? What kind of
Mhm.
team do you have this year that is different than maybe last year, 2 years ago?
I think what really separates our team is that this is one of the few years I truly feel like we can play either a slowdown or a fast-paced game. Most years we've had either six guards that were all fast and we just had to go a million miles an hour. But if someone slowed us down, we were in trouble. And we have had other teams that kind of were a plotting team, and we struggled if we had to play up tempo. But I have three guards that I truly think would start on any team in the state. And that's not saying that there's not guards across the state that are not as good, if not better than my three guards. But I think if you're looking at a starting five of any team, I'll take my three and match them up against anyone in the state. And I feel comfortable saying that. I have a point guard, Tia Petaway. I think that's the name that most people are familiar with. She was game time CT, New Haven Register, first team All State as a junior. Really can do so many things. But I think a player that often gets overlooked is Shade Boucher, who's a two-time All Conference player. And I truly think if you talk to other CCC coaches, like Tony Floyd's a perfect example. He always talks about Shade when we play them, is she's on equal par with Tia. So we really have two senior guards who have played 4 years and will play in college and just can play so up tempo, but also can slow things down. And they're really like the two-headed monster when I think of them, because they're either one can bring the ball up and set us up and we're fine. And then I think what will hopefully separate us, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, is we have a sophomore, Shaylin Smith, who I truly think that by the time she graduates could be better than both of them. I'm not saying she's better than them now, but I'm saying when all is said and done, she has the potential to be better than both Shade and Tia. So it's just like we have three really terrific options there. So that's what I think separates us from most teams. And then we have a bunch of other kids that really, really help out. I have a post player, Jada Bryant, that is she says she's 5'11", but she's 6 feet. Because I don't know why, but I've had kids, and this has happened before, that no one wants to say they're 6 feet tall, but she's 6 feet tall. And she's started for 3 years now too. So we have 4 kids who have a ton of varsity experience, and that's going to really help us. And then I have 3 other seniors who are really battling out for the starting position in my first 2 subs, but they all have experience. And whenever you have seniors on the court, you always feel a little better. You always feel a little better because you have all that experience. So we have an experienced team and we have a skilled team. So that's, I think, what might separate us from most teams.
Guard play, man, is so crucial in my opinion when it comes to me being able to, when I'm looking at games, the first thing that I've always looked at is, okay, how many teams or how many guards are on the team? Because I feel like, because the way the game is played now, like, you're really not seeing a lot of big time, you see centers, you may see some strong, power forwards, but typically, at least that I've seen in Connecticut, it's guard play, guard play, guard play. And if you've got guard play, you can survive. And like you said, you can speed it up, you can slow it down. If you got to go up tempo, you can. But to have the amount of players that you have and to have confidence in them, that's huge.
And that's what we've had some players in the past. Actually, my freshman coach, Taylor Ankinoki, was like a 3-time all conference point guard. But when you have one, we would face box and ones. We even had a couple teams play triangles and 2, and they just both guarded her. So that's what I think is going to be a challenge, hopefully for teams that play us, is that they can box in 1 Tia, and then Shade and Shaylin are going to have a ton of space as well as my other players. So I fully agree. You have to have guards to have success, because you got to have a pilot of the plane. You can have a plane full of great passengers, but if the pilot doesn't know what he's doing, you're in trouble. So.
And you can't stop all 3. You got to pick your poison. You got to hope the other 2
hopefully.
are, yeah. but again, like I said, if you're going to stop one, the other 2, again, it's one thing if it's 2, but with 3, if you stop one, let's say, the other 2, you're bound to have one be on, the other one be, if not on, at least getting some shots in, if not doing something defensively. So it helps to be able to have multiple players that you can count on.
Yes, and that's also where I think people will see the development. And like my post player, Jada Bryant, is when you have those other 3 kids on the court, you can't really cheat in the post. So she's going to have more isolation opportunities, which she's going to complete. So it definitely opens the floor up, because even if like Tia or Shade has an off day, for example, and hopefully that only happens once or twice, there's the other teams are still going to have at least one player always shadowing them. So even if they're not having that good day, it's opening up space for everybody else.
You know, so would you say, Coach, that in a normal game, let's say, for your players, that if you have to rely on shooting the three outside because they're just blocking you in and you can't get in the paint, then you're going to have to rely on that. And then also same thing where if the team is forcing you to come in and have baskets in the low post or from the elbow, is your team capable of doing that?
Yeah, I truly believe that we are, because that's, I think right now, and I'm saying this on December 10th, my projected fifth starter is Alexa DeSena, who's a kid who, that's where she lives at. She makes those little baseline and elbow jump shots. She's really consistent at it. And so when we've had our scrimmages, she scored a bunch of points because, like we've been talking about, teams are so focused in on our other crew that she just finds that open space and makes the shot. And so I do feel comfortable in saying that my starting five, all five can score. So there's not like that. Usually when I scout somebody, being very honest, usually most teams, there's one player that might be a defensive dynamo, but not really able to put the ball in the basket. So you can kind of cheat off that player. And I really feel comfortable in saying that I don't think there's anyone on our team, our first five, that you can cheat off of.
So if I was ever to watch a game, if I'm able to broadcast one or catch a game during my busy season,
hopefully late March.
Yes, I would. Hey, I would love to be able to do that. Seriously. CIAC, put me on a game, please. Would I potentially see a hook shot? I love the hook shots. Any of those?
I don't know. The player you would probably see that from is Shade.
Okay.
Because Shade plays like, if you didn't know any better, you would think it's like the 1970s, because she has all the playground moves with the hooks and the scoops and it's amazing, because sometimes I'll be watching her and going, please don't take that shot. And it always tends to go in. So,
hey, she's proven you wrong time and time again.
I hope she keeps proving me wrong.
But Coach, I really do appreciate you coming on. I do have one more question for you really quick. For people who know a little or nothing, or may just have not been keeping up with the Middletown team, what can people expect if they come to a game this season?
I think what people can expect is that we are going to, obviously, hopefully we're going to play fundamentally sound, but we are going to go right at other teams. We're not a team that kind of waits 2 quarters to see what the other team's going, and it's a 14-12 at halftime, and it might be 14-12 if someone comes to see us, but it's going to be because we're just having an off shooting night. Like, we want to get up the floor. We want to run our break. We like to press at times, depending on obviously the opponent. But we like to play a faster style of play. And we're really trying to push tempo when we can, and really just see a bunch of kids who compete. I mean, these kids, the one thing I can say is, whether we're on or off, it's a win or a loss, you're going to watch our team and go, those kids competed for 32 minutes.
Coach, I hope I have an opportunity to be able to catch you guys this season at some point. I really do.
That would be great.
But hey, you enjoy the rest of your night, and again, stay in touch, please.
All right, sounds good.
That wrap things up here in the Connecticut Sports Talent Show. So until next time, stay safe. Remember, CT stands for Connected Talent. I'm not sure you find them all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and be well.